die. Episode 15.
Hi folks, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever it is you are and whatever it is you're doing. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me. So the last time we were here, we went over Amelie's story, dug through her notes and shared her descent into the darkness, both literal and figurative. Now, I don't believe all of her story. I mean, that is to say, the events she describes, I believe they happened. The murders, the hauntings, I 100% believe that that is true. I know that she killed somebody. She killed two people, actually, and she's been responsible for a lot more, upset than just that. But who am I going to tell about that? Take this straight to the police, I may as well just throw it in the trash. It's wild, absolutely wild story against interests that are backed up by big money and the work of literally generations. So it would just be a complete waste of time, especially because what am I going to say to the officers if they say, hey, we'd like you to come down to the station? Sorry, officer, I can't. If I leave my house, the air's going to kill me. How do you think that's going to go down? Not a lot can be done with that. But I mean, it's true as well. Likewise with the people who know about this stuff, the society, they're more than welcome to all my research. But they've already told me that I'm on my own. They can't offer me any help from any revelations that I've got. So that's that. I mean, I collect their package tonight. This evening is when I will be receiving what they promised me. And I'm hoping for something, anything worthwhile from that. So yeah, I went through all of her notes and I believe Amelie. I believe her for the most part. I believe her. And it was very useful to review because now I know never to hang out in French forests, I guess. I sound bitter about it, but you kind of hope for that silver bullet, right? You kind of think, well, this is going to give me something really important, but no, it's just more. It's more drips and drabs. I mean, I know why it wants me now, and it's because I'm not all that special. It's nothing crazy. This is just the right headspace at the right time. And, I'll be talking about that today because admin has gone through all the DNA results and, well, you know what? I'll save that until we get to it because that can all fit together. But yeah, I also just want to say there's things that I don't believe in Amelie's story. I don't believe a lot of her obvious lies to herself. She spent so much time lying to herself and tying herself in knots to justify anything, to justify her own corruption. And I can pity how it ended for her. Well, she's still out there, but for all intents and purposes, as an individual person, I don't believe she exists. But to get to that point, she had agency, she had choices, she had off-ramps, and she chose to just keep on going out of pure hubris. And that's the same for all of them. Everybody at Yggdrasil House, everybody in the upper echelons of that cult. Because, nobody sees a narcissist everywhere around them quite like a narcissist, right? And so her descriptions of these people, there's a lot of projection. She's somebody who would project a lot, but saying that, anyone who is at the point where they believe they can partner with something like this, let alone control a thing like this, well, what else are you going to call it? It's narcissism. I mean, calling it a little bit of confidence is like calling a bullet in the head a sleeping pill. So yeah, what I got was another piece of the puzzle. And again, just even with so much revealed, enough to just catch a glimpse of what is there, I can still only just see parts of the pattern. There's still just so many gaps. I mean, I don't leave this house anymore. I just review these notes. I've spent the past few days going over and over everything. And what started as a few notes stuck to the wall, they've just grown. It's veined out now, crisscrossing threads. I ran out of tack. Like recently, I ran out of tack, and then I ran out of sellotape. And so I've just been using glue to stick these things to the wall because, I mean, that's really stupid, but it's not like I'm going to be redecorating anytime soon or I'm expecting anybody to come on over and visit. You know, it's not like, oh, I've got to take this off the wall now and I plan to redecorate this room. That's the furthest thing from my goddamn mind. So yeah, I'm using glue to stick things to my goddamn murder wall. That's the point that I'm at. That's the point that I'm at with this. But it's what keeps me on track. And this sounds like I'm lying to myself in the same way I said that Amelie lies to herself, but it's not. I've said before, this is what keeps me stable. You know, this is what keeps me grounded, is research, is looking for ways to make something impossible make some kind of sense. On top of that, though, I've never really knew what loneliness meant until now. I've talked before about loneliness. I've talked before about feeling a little disconnected from people, and that's fine. But there's a rawness to this. I thought it was something that I understood. I thought when somebody discusses loneliness, I thought I know what they mean. But this isolation it's something else. We're social creatures, and I'm a social creature, and as much as I enjoy my own company, this is like torturous. Like it's just this oh my fucking Jesus. God. Fuck. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. He's okay. Okay, he's gone. He's gone. You know what the fucking joke of all this is? I'm never alone. I'm lonely, but I am never alone. He is always in the hall or the rooms above me or behind. I mean, there's times when I can see his shadow over my shoulder when there's no light to cast it. And if I turn around, there's nothing there. There's no shape, there's no spirit, and there is never, ever any light. And sometimes I just find myself closing my eyes and staring down while those dead whispers get louder and louder and louder, just getting really close to my ear. Because I can't handle it. And there's no adaptation to this kind of fear. What was it Amelie said? It was similar, and I think somebody else may have said it. It might have been a quote from somewhere else. She said, terror is not being able to look, and horror is just being unable to look away. And I know that. It feels like my mind is being like just ripped in half. So yeah, there's no adaptation to that. There's no. I can hear him walking upstairs now. Okay, it's gone. Okay. I hate this. I fucking hate it. I hate it so much. But again, never comes in the door. Just outside the door, just stoking this fear. I have to recognize that. I have to understand that. It's not coming in, and that means that it can't hurt me. I think. But I've talked. I think you have to understand, like, this house right now. Like, I've talked about lost time, right? Where I've been falling into my own head, and that's when all of this feels the worst. When I'm on the edge of panic and swaying like 45 degrees over the abyss, that's when the moments just become immeasurably long. When the clock stops on any kind of physical motion, but my mind is still moving. And I can sometimes wonder if this is what Chris experienced when he gave up. When he stopped keeping notes on what came for him. And I think about Chris a lot because he's out there now, physically out there. Maybe some part of him is still inside it, but his body is out there with glass eyes and varnished skin, being worn like some kind of fucked up coat by that thing. And I know its name now. I've spoken its name repeatedly, but I won't say it again because there's a grotesque comfort to saying it. It feels so easy. It feels good. Even though speaking its name is like a lighter fluid being poured down my throat. I want to say it now, just like I want nicotine. I want to say its name, and if I do, it'll ignite that lighter fluid in my throat. It's so hard to explain. It's so hard to. Oh my fuck. It's always doing this. It's on the stairs now. It never rushes the door, but I always fucking expect it to. Like, one day or night, I know it's going to come in here. Maybe it already comes into my room when I sleep. But the thing is, did you hear how many flights of stairs it ran down? I don't have that many flights of stairs in this house. God, I need a minute to breathe, but that's what it's not giving me. It's just tries to stop me from focusing. And I don't know how long I can keep going in this state of fight or flight. And I mean, maybe that's the fucking point, right? It keeps me in that twilight tension, and keeping me in that mode is important to it as dawn or dusk or the shadows beneath the trees or that half light of rain clouds about being between. Because there's one thing I know about all of this: it values ritual and symbolism so much. But this house is going away again. It's going away again. Oh my God. Okay. This house, it's longer than it should be, and it is taller than it should be. The hallway has more doors than it should have, and earlier I went to the fourth floor of a 2-floor building, and there were more floors winding upwards above me. Just like Yggdrasil House and Amelie's description of that. It's an expansion not into space, but I don't even know. I'm not smart enough to explain this, and I'm not putting myself down there. I'm not like, oh, you're smart enough. No, I'm not putting myself down there. I don't know if anybody is smart enough to understand this, to explain it. Because I can understand on some deep level that it's possibly just me. That this isn't an expansion outward, but even though I'm walking for a full minute to cross a 10-foot hallway, I'm not really spending a minute to do that. That it's just some hyperphysical symptom of time bending around my brain like it's a black hole. That the space around me also stretches out for all intents and purposes, and I'm in this kind of elsewhere labyrinth while still walking that I don't know. Basically, am I still in somewhere really mundane, or have I just fallen through the gaps? I don't know here. I mean, but one revelation I had about this, and it was just before I switched on the mic, and honestly, I wasn't sure it's worth talking about, but it feels right. But actually, let's just go over the main events and what we know before I come to that. Because putting all of this in some sort of context, it can only help. I've put together a lot of information over the course of my experiences and an absolute load of papers thrown at the wall. They all link up in a way that makes sense to me. If somebody else looked at this, they would not understand it. I need to be there to guide through the leaps of logic, and I understand that is why boards with a lot of strings pointing to different things make people think, well, I shouldn't listen to this guy. I totally understand that, and I am not going to say but, because there is no but on that. It's wild. If you've been with me this far, you'll understand the leaps in logic that I make. You'll understand why certain things make sense and other things don't. And I think a good place to start with this is with the timeline. I built out this timeline to provide some structure to all of these notes that I have. This is what helps me to see where things sit. And we have to go right back to the beginning and to the time where all this began. And I don't know what happened there, but I know that there has to be a moment without and then with the first father and king. Or maybe there isn't. Maybe he has always been there. But that's an unknown right now. So we start with a big question mark, and then we move forward to 73 BC, which is around the time that the Society for Cultural and Historical Research can trace their history back to, where Spartacus's rebellion against Rome goes on for several years and ends with 6,000 slaves crucified along 120 miles of the Appian Way toward Rome. And those people were killed by Marcus Licinius Crassus. An observation here is that this is one of the richest men in human history. If you don't know Crassus, he made a lot of his money by funding Sulla, who just tore through Rome and just ripped away kind of houses and property from people. And because Marcus Crassus funded that, he did very well out of it. And he would also have people turn up to fires with water and demand payment to put those fires out. And then he would buy the rubble and sell the rubble on once it had been rebuilt into a home for a very healthy profit. And I think you can already guess that those fires were not accidental. Crassus was very eager to end this rebellion because his riches were all built on the backs of slaves, right? And interestingly enough, he met his end having molten gold poured down his throat. I mean, well, in historical fact, that didn't happen. But that's the legend, and I'm going to go with it because fuck that guy. But even back then, I think there's a thread which links to today, and it's a pattern. And that pattern is people with his kind of wealth serving the king in some fashion or having some connection with all of this. And Amelie said most of the people at the gatherings and at Yggdrasil House were rich kids. And a lot of their structures for bullying were built around societal status and wealth. I mean, she wasn't a starving artist. Not by a long shot. Her lifestyle was funded by her very, very rich parents. And maybe this is a reach, but honestly, there's a possibility there, and I can't prove it. And it's not like, who am I proving this to? It's not like there's a jury out there that I'm trying to convince. It's just an interesting connection to what I've seen today. And if it's part of the pattern, then it goes on the wall. And Amelie's notes have said that the ancient needs to renew its form every 10 to 30 years. So across those 2,000 years, there's been a kind of minimum of 200 victims in that time. And she also mentioned brethren, so 7 of these things, and with them, so that's, roughly 1,400 people over 2,000 years. That's a rounding error, so that answered the question of how this can happen for so long. If you look at it on a timeline and geographically, there's too much else going on in the world that, kind of like, why are people really going to pick up on this? The people who are being drawn away, people like myself, they're estranged from others for a little while, or, the people who we've seen, like Chris, for example, somebody on a private journey to better themselves, getting dragged off the road to self-improvement into this fucking nightmare. They're not people that people are going to go looking for. It's not like there are families who are being kind of a specific family that is under assault with this. There's no kind of historical reference to it. No one would think, oh, we're cursed. And then we have the cult. And I don't believe that this cult that I'm dealing with today was always the cult. I think there was, there's been iterations. There has to have been iterations all along the way. So the Breath Company, which is how I'm going to refer to Mind Flow from now on, because as I mentioned before, it's wild to me that I can go over the nightmare realm wrought by the hubris of humanity's greed, creeping across all the ages of our species, grasping us in its talons and ripping our sanity to shreds. And, kind of read out loud the final testaments of murderous cultists. But if I mention the name of this stupid app, then that's verboten, right? That's going to get me a strike. That's what gets me pulled off. And it's insane, but it works because when you hear me talking about this, it's madness. There's no real grounding to it. If I'm going after a company, that's what gets attention. It's a kind of legal surgery that pinpoints what would gather attention, and factoring in everything else, it just becomes noise on the internet where there's already so much static. If you can take away the focus of what somebody's talking about, you can kind of like blunt their message. So that's what they do. That's just what they do. Anyway, the cult itself is so dedicated to just one of the king's servants. And that means that there's likely others with different tactics, which have also existed along this timeline for millennia. And within those cults, that means that there's adherence, that means that there's structures and secrecy and dogma. And they can't be a cancer on society. They have to remain hidden. They can't slowly kill society because they need people like me. They need us to exist, and they need to shepherd certain events to happen in order for their ancient to claim me or to claim us. So they're not a disease. They're more like worms taking what they need and not making themselves known as they just kind of like grow and whine through humanity's guts. I mean, the Breath Company itself has just over 1 million subscribers as of last year, and that's very small in the wellness industry. And it's been dropping thanks to their overtly fascist ass message. But people, people don't generally like that kind of garbage. They really don't. But it is self-selecting for a specific type of person. For arrogant, narcissistic guys and girls who are just desperate to give their autonomy away to a higher power, a strong man, a dictator, anything that means they don't have to make decisions. They can just feel superior without having to actually do anything. That's the trap of that, right? That's their comfort zone. Morons, you know what I mean? Less people involved overall, but it's more of the kind of people that they want. If we hone in on the past 16 years, we have several accounts, Amelie's, Chris's, and mine. To add to that, there's our childhoods, the dreams that myself and Chris had of the tree as a child and the trauma that we experienced as children. And is that childhood trauma how they then catch our scent? Is that when the hunt begins and we're watched until the time is right? So what we experience as children, is that the first instance of them knowing about us, and then they just wait for that trigger situation, and that's when everything ramps up? And that's a good time to talk about what admin found when she delved into my DNA results. So just a word on admin quickly. She's become quite cautious. She refuses to speak over the phone. She believes direct voice communication might serve as a conduit for whatever the fuck is in this house. And I can't blame her. Given what's happening, I get it. She won't speak over Discord, won't hop on the mic. I totally get it, especially when the society gave that time limit on contact with them. And given the experience that she's had recently with noises and what sound like echoes of what's been going on in this house, and the people who've been watching her. I mean, she told me at the start she's always been quite paranoid anyway. That's how she got into this world and took an interest in this world. And I just hope she's okay. And that she's still here at all, it makes me eternally grateful. She compiled a list of 3 names that she'd pulled out of the DNA results. So I don't know if you know about this, but when you do a DNA result, they give you a list and say you're 3% Swedish, you're 20% Irish, and so on. And then it connects you with people who are potentially related to you, who share your DNA. And it goes down a very long scale there. There can be people on that list who are, you have barely anything shared with. And the 3 names she shared with me, different surnames, very different ages across Europe and the US. Pictures have got absolutely nothing in common with me. You can look at them that I look nothing like them, except one of them has red hair. And being that is how I reason that this could be useful in the first place, maybe that's the link. It was my first thought when I looked at these photos and these names, but nothing had happened to these 3 people. They were all fine, living normal lives according to their social feeds. Most of them had families, kids, grandkids, loved ones. Most of them had posted recently, or at least the people around them had tagged them in some event or other. And on the face of it, there was nobody related to the events that I'd been experiencing. Then admin went that little bit further, as she does. And that handful of random names with the barest links to me, and we're talking way, way back with the common ancestor that we had, is not even visible. Kind of like you can't find where we share an ancestor on the page. It would be impossible to do so. But with those people, there was a link. Each of these 3 people that she shared all had people in their lives who had vanished. And she found this through going over the socials and checking in on news and information, memorial posts, memories shared, links to articles about missing relatives. One of these was as far back as the 60s. Somebody's sister in Oregon. They'd become estranged and then vanished. Another in the 80s. It was a niece in Scotland who just disappeared. And a cousin in Chicago a decade ago. That's the one we know. Chris. I'm still floored from this because I was right. I was fucking right. And for all of that, this doesn't really change anything. I was right. We're not close relatives. If you look at it on paper, like I say, you can't see and you will never see where any of this intersects. But it does. And I don't know what that means, but it feels like a big part of this because there's some reason it's us. And if it has to be us, if you think about the numbers I mentioned, over thousands of years, that is a small amount of people. That is not very many people at all. I'm a resource to them. We are resources, and that's why they take their time. We have value. And that doesn't help me right now. It's not a quick fix, and it's no solution. But it informs the why of things, and it says to me, the value that I have means I'm somewhat protected. I don't know how far that protection goes. I think it's coming to its end. The escalation of things, how quickly Chris's accounts ended, all of that, I don't think I have long to go here. But it's something. And if we take a look at that and take it on the timeline, we thread through that timeline, this family tree dividing and dividing and dividing and splitting off. Do you know what it would probably look like if I flipped it over? And I'll never be able to find this out in the same way I'll never be able to find out who our common ancestor is. But I know 100% in my heart of hearts that if I was able to just somehow divine this whole family tree, flip it over and hold it up to that thing I see in my dreams, it would, even in an abstracted way, align with the branches of that fucking tree because it's all patterns and it's all symbolism on a wild scale. And maybe the ancient is a distant ancestor, and maybe it needs us. And the shortness of time that it has in our bodies is a result of our refracted blood. And all of this then becomes a case of that diversity begetting a kind of immunity. So that makes all of us connected by this thinnest of threads over thousands of years and thousands of miles, and we can't share our experiences because it's madness. And as I said before, it's so minor in the great scheme of things. Who's going to notice? Who is there to pick up on this if there are no survivors? Like tragedy befalling families is absolutely one thing, but this is like dropping rocks onto a line of ants. Who's going to pick up on it at that scale? And it's only thanks to admin and the internet that I was able to connect with Chris and the experience that he had. And the internet helped him to gather information too. before us and before that, what the hell did those folks have? They were isolated from the herd and ran down. I mean, nowadays, the gazelles have Google. Me being the gazelle, of course, you can tell that some of the information is giving me a boost and talking about it's giving me a bit of a boost because I'm talking absolute shite again. That's it's nonsense, but it makes sense, right? I hope it makes sense to me, but I'm not exactly in the right mind. So yeah, that's all the timeline right up until the breathing company gets started up, and a few years later, Amelie joins when the ancient is falling apart. The way she describes it being maintained and how they're gathering knights, the Damurung, to it, the stalkers, for a hunt, to get it ready to go. This was also around the time that Chris's trigger event happened, the fire and the funeral. Because in Amelie's notes, if we put that on the timeline, she gave herself up to the ancient in January of 2009. And that New York funeral was in May of 2009. I'm absolutely missing something here, but I don't believe the cult are guiding these events. I don't believe they need to. I believe they are kind of maybe divining them, and maybe the scent of that horror draws them in or tells them that it's time to start pulling your forces together. Because by April of 2012, Chris is gone. And I think he ran. I think he was from the dates that are on his pages, he was so much earlier in the process than I am. But he also experienced a lot more than me because he took himself off to a friend's place, just like I ran away to hop on the train and the hotel. But he never realized that some of the experiences he was having outside of there were different things. He thought it was all one thing. He never understood what I'm quite shameful to say. Like, I understand that if I came home and did as I'm told and came back to this place, then he would probably have survived a bit longer. Maybe he would have been able to dig through his notes and find something else. So I think he ran. I think he ran and he got caught. I just hate it. I hate that it has me here. I hate that I'm doing what it wants. I that's the thing that I can't get past it. I find it really difficult. And I can hear it again now. Upstairs. I don't know if you can pick that up. Just shuffling around, mumbling. It's, again, just, I hate it. So I understand why he ran. I understand that he ran before it got into him or it stopped him being able to run away. I wish I'd kept going. There's a part of me that just wishes I'd never come back here. Because even with the fear, I'd have more agency, you know? Because I don't know how far Chris got. I don't know what he experienced on the roads, or I don't know what happened. We just know that it caught him. The ancient got him, and that Amelie and that bastard that I threw off the fort at Cave Hill were there and helped. Which also brings me to this next revelation from admin. I'd always thought that the corpse that were found in those Wisconsin woods was Chris initially. And that was a thing until I was attacked on Cave Hill. And after that, I just assumed the corpse was the previous vessel, right? But then Amelie spoke about the hallowed faces that she saw. And it seems they try and keep our heads around in their sacrificial pit, which is just lovely. Yeah, everything I've always wanted out of life. So who are these individuals? Where'd the corpse come from? No blood, no dental records, no fingerprints, nothing from like mouth to gut, nothing to identify, no worms or carrion, no bites, just rancid flesh. And what admin had found was relevant images to share with me. So one of the first pictures is from 1889. It's a sepia picture. It's got those dark lines covered in unreadable scribbles you'll sometimes see from pictures back then. There's an eyeless, hairless head lolling to one side over bared and broken ribs. Just a genderless, broken frame with its jaw sagging low, revealing a completely hollow mouth and a throat so black I get vertigo from just looking at it. And there's no sign of where that picture was taken. It's just a date. And then again in 1937 in Wales, almost the same pose here, but open eyes, really nothing but that darkness, the same darkness as the mouth of the body in 1889. Just broken on a large rock jutting out of the sea. And then another picture using the same old camera dated just 2 weeks later. This one there, just less worn down, no less depersonalized, just stripped of any kind of recognition, shelled and completely hollowed out. Then the final image is from the 80s in Scotland. And admin's note answered my question here before it was even fully formed, because this was from the same time and the same place as my distant relatives lost a niece. And admin theorizes that when the ancient can't transfer directly into a suitable host, maybe due to interference or fighting back, or maybe the Damarung are compromised, it needs to get a hold of a temporary vessel. It's like a whale, right? It needs to come up for air, but it doesn't live on land. Given how well taken care of it is by those servants, and what Amelie described, it being kind of like polished and healed up, this tells me the hunt isn't always plain sailing. People do fight back, and there's struggle to this. And again, in struggle there's hope, right? If people fight back, there has to be hope. Just because somebody's not won yet doesn't mean you can't win. I mean, maybe it's just like a fucking carnival game where you're throwing balls at milk bottles that are glued together. Maybe it's all rigged. Maybe it is rigged. But it makes me think I've been reductive with the deaths as well, because considering I've only taken into account those of us taken by the ancients, I have to also think about the people killed at the ceremony that Amelie was a part of, or the people who've been bullied, or the people it needed to make disappear, people who get too close, maybe just people it steals the screams from for flavor. It isn't just us, the people who are being hunted, and our deaths at stake here. There's misery and despair, and that's without even considering the broader implications of things. Like, what does the king want? Where is this going? Is it just misery from now until the end of time? Then rolling on from that, there's the fall of that Harry Nolan arsehole from YouTube. The new Amelie in that mold, an arrogant, blind, perfect follower. When I saw him, he didn't look ruined like the others. He still had some semblance of thought left in him. So an interesting parallel here is his fall from grace was around the time my grandfather passed away. And that leads me to think then around that time, recruitment for the Damarung was in session. As I said, they somehow knew that I was ready to be hunted, that this was ready to begin. They were prepared. So that's pretty much the complete timeline about where we stand, how we got here, and the scope of it's fairly overwhelming but simple. to understand. If you think of it as that straight line with these, there's a lot of things that happen, but there are smaller events that have more importance coming off it. If you think of it that way, you can see that there is a method and there is a pattern that is going on time and time again. And it shows that the way things need to be done, that there are rules to this, as obfuscated as they are by the chaos of all of this. So there's multiple aspects to think about here. On top of the timeline, we've got everything else. So I'll start with the dangers that are out there. A few weeks ago, I would never have considered any of this real, but the things that I encountered on the train and in the hotel room, they were drawn to me most likely because of some taint on, for want of a better word, my soul. Their own rituals or triggers to come forth, as it were at some lower threshold because I've been worn down. And so there's a world of unknowns out there way beyond my situation. And I have to ask, if I survive this, will I always be at their mercy? Am I always just... is there any way out of this, is what I'm saying, is even if I get through this, am I now just kind of like pray for everything that's out there? Will I always just be at their mercy? Then we have the cult itself, full of resources. It's from the mystical to the mundane. It has shadowy backers. I don't know what they want. I don't know what they get from this. And from Amelie's notes and my understanding of this, I think this is all personal. I think it has to be a deal rather than worship for the sake of worship, because the kind of people pushing this are going to be mercenary. They're self-involved and they expect returns. And what that is, we can take a quick guess, because humans are pretty simple when you get down to the basics of it, right? Power, long life, legacy. That's what they're after. That's what people have been after since the dawn of time. It's an easy sell for those people, and they're going to use this to get it. And then within the structure of that cult, but so very different to everybody else, we have the stalkers, the Belammruagf, these knights of the ancient. They're lost, broken minds who've given away their own autonomy and exist purely to serve the needs of their master. I've seen them up close. Their blood isn't blood, and something else pumps through their thin veins. And after hearing about the rituals that Amelie saw just to maintain the ancient, I know that the one I fought was also kind of being lacquered and pulled back together. I think the tattoos that I believed were tattoos were maybe places where there'd been repairs made, or I don't even want to say healing. I say repairs because I don't know if I can think of these as people anymore. It explains their stiff movements and that mannequin face and the silence. So these are the hunters. They're the ones who found me and are preparing me. They're strong, but they're also simple-minded in their focus. What was it that Amelie called herself? She said she's a limb, which I think it means that they just do what the ancient wants, and that's it. I've beaten one of them, but if they come in a pack, I don't know how the hell I'll be able to handle that. And then just off from that, before I even consider the ancient itself, we have the presence. What's kickstarted all of this? And I've not been able to forget the mass of that unseen thing just pressing down on me when I'd wake, and pressing down on me when I was in the bath, staring up, drowning. And, the way that after I kind of walk through the rooms, the lights would be dimmed, and how it filled out the shadows beneath the trees when I was running through Cave Hill in an absolute panic. I've stopped feeling the pressure of it after the ancient stole a scream from me at the top of Cave Hill. And maybe I've been thinking about that the wrong way as well. I think of it as taking something from me, but maybe it put something in as well, because after that, that's when the hauntings began. And the presence went. It didn't go away. It never left. It's one thing that I know is it's not gone away. It's easy to think that it has. It's easy to trick myself into thinking it's gone. It used to just be out of sight, right? And that was disconcerting, but I knew it was there. But right now, it's more like I'm inside it. I'm like inside of its jaws, or it's inside of me, or impossibly both of those things at the same time. And that was my thought before I began recording this, because that shift in space within the house, is that because I'm already having my humanity choked out of me? And that this has gone beyond prevention toward inevitability? I mean, it's not a pleasant thought. It's not pleasant, it's not nice, and it's not helpful, but it's a fair thought. Was I doomed the moment I was grabbed on the hill? And the tearing down of reality around me in this place that was supposed to be safe and made me so happy? Is that just a symptom of my degradation? Then there's the things in this place, the ghosts, the movement, the noises, and mostly my stepfather. It's him, and it's not him. It's like just some part of his filthy little fucking spirit has just been dragged out of hell and put to work. And it feels targeted, because if this was like outside of the house and I'm just a locus for spirits that are coming to me, much like on the train and in that hotel room, then why don't I hear other ghosts more closely? Why don't I hear my mother? Why don't I get her opinion, her voice? That would, if it was the case that this is just a side effect of what's happening, why is it just him? My story with him is done. I have closure. It's done, dusted, the door's closed. I have nothing else to say to him. I was satisfied. I was done, I was out, and I was away. And this just feels like an attempt to rip open old wounds, and it's working, because this is fucking terrifying. If this was just a haunting, I know she would be here. I know that my mother would be here, and I do have... It's not contrary to anything I've said before, because I've kind of mentioned that I have unresolved words for her. I do have regrets. And there's a chance for closure in that, right? There's a chance for a peace, because I don't hate her. I don't blame her. I loved her, and it was pain that made me stay away from her. And I never got to tell her that, and I never got to see her smile like we smiled that night. She told me that he was leaving, or show her that I turned out okay. And the ancient or whatever the fuck can't use her, because there's hope in something like that. That's being denied to me, and that is intentional, because even a ghost of my mother would give me some hope. It would give me a chance to say things that I never got a chance to say, and those feelings could disrupt the hold over me. And by denying me that, it keeps me trapped in this cycle of just unresolved grief and fear, dredging up things that were finished and over, and just inflating them. It's calculated, and it feels designed to wear me down and make me compliant. Because there's no catharsis with John's ghost. Well, I've seen him run away from me like a coward. And I lived while he died. I lived my life. I lived a happy, good life. Well, he died running away. He oh God. Oh fuck. He died in a car crash. He died in a fucking car crash. He died running away in a fucking car crash. They wouldn't. They couldn't. They wouldn't do what they did to Amelie's sister, right? Or with Loris. Where they faked it. They couldn't fake that. But why would they do that? Were they watching me when I was that young? He's dead. He's fucking dead. It's 25 years. 25 years, he's dead. Like, he's gone. Like, I know he's fucking dead. Like, why would they... What would be the gain for that? Like... Oh my fucking... But... That smell... The smell of him... That's in this house... That's his smell. That's him. That is him. But he's dead. He's fucking dead. He's gone. Fuck. Fuck. Fucking God. Don't, please, please, please. Please. Please, don't open the door. Don't, please. Whatever's out there is gone. It's just gone down those long halls into doors that don't exist. It's not possible. I'd gotten used to fear, all of this. I've said it before. I've got used to it all, but my whole life, my whole fucking life, this thing has just been waiting. They know how to hurt me. How do I even fight something like that? The planning in this, the sheer pressure of that generational plan, just how do you deal with that? How can you stand up against something like that? It's like a stiletto heel stamping on my temple. That's how focused and directed this pressure is. I talked about hope. I talked about struggle, but I have no hope, not really. And without hope, what's the point of struggling? Whatever the society is sending me, it has to be something. It has to be anything. Because I'm almost done. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna fucking die.